Here we are with the dialogue that will change the context of the alien question for all time. The homuncular house and the secret within, which has the answer to all queries regarding the alien intelligence quandaries and related issues, who we are in the galaxy, how we are going to stand up and match evolved and ancient alien races at a galactic level. How do we play with the big boys, essentially? That's the big question. The answer, my friends, lies within. And it's in the context of my Titanic revelations that the meaning of this secret will be illuminated for all to see and benefit from. But first, in my presentation, which will include several video clips, we're going to, now thinking about the alien question, we're going to remind ourselves of the ambiguity of the entire phenomenon and how much, my goodness, shocking events. Is it still going though? Dun dun dun! How much of the alien question is bogged down in, remember you tighten that by turning it to the right, is bogged down in confusion with other activities going on, which is impersonating alien activity, such as the dwarves. And here in this brief scene from Whitley Strieber's Communion, starring Christopher Walken, we're going to see in the background here just the encounter with what he encounters, Whitley Strieber and his experiences, which is much more stereotypically the dwarves, a la Mr. Grey and the things I've been encountering. So I'm going to keep these things in proper perspective. You see. Encounter with the mysterious thing in the light. Is it a ship? Is it a doorway into another world? You got to keep open mind. Just because it's a glowing, pulsing thing doesn't mean it's a ship that's landed. It could be a doorway. Here they are, the dwarves, partying. At first he was afraid, you see. Now he's come to terms with it. Strieber's experience includes two types of dwarves. These who take on the characteristic of and define the gray for the population, even though they're kind of yellowish in his experience. And then these little blue dwarf runts, who are worker creators, who whip out all the technology that is commanded and organized by the more elite, bug-eyed, stereotypical aliens. But anyway, so previously in the Communion story, Strieber's been afraid, reacting with fear.
I must be awake.
But now he's learned to deal with it. He's learned to deal with it.
I must be awake.
He's awake. He's not afraid. He's not asleep, blinded by his fear. Just because they're strange and unexpected doesn't mean he can't interact with them with respect and with a good perspective. That's my approach with the dwarves. Just because it's a dwarf doesn't mean you have to be afraid of it. And it takes a certain character, I know, to adapt to that type of experience, encountering a weird alien creature. But once you adapt to them on their level, they're really just like anybody else. You know, the handshake is key. We have to be willing to shake hands with the cosmic forces, strange as they may be. And that's one of the meanings for this pervasive return of the little people to the culture through the UFO encounter now. To get us to remind us that we have to share the world with many other beings. And share
I'm going to do a trick. Look at this.
Our perspective as well. So now there's an interesting bit here where he encounters himself.
Has the spell.
Himself as the trickster.
This has the crook, though. Let's say a few things. First, I'd like to say season's greetings. Then I'd like to say, keep your hands on the table at all times. Huh?
Representing his own fears and failures in the past. You know, he says, an echoing of reflecting back his previous reactions. Oh, please, don't let it be happening. Oh, you get out of my mind. I'm angry with you. But now, he's evolved beyond that, you see.
I can't wake up. I am the dreamer. You are the dream.
I am the dreamer and you are the dream. That's the key.
The thing that really matters here is what I'm about to show you.
And that is the essence of that connection now. The only thing that really matters is what I'm about to show you. In other words, it doesn't matter what the real facts are in a UFO encounter. It doesn't matter what the truth is, what would show up on film or not, what you can bring back into a court of law and present as evidence of alien encounter. All that matters is what this entity is going to show you in the moment. So that's an important factor, especially when you consider that the dwarves, in impersonating what we are considering in popular culture to be aliens, are actually trying to open our minds and communicate with us in different ways that allow us to perceive other dimensions, let's say. In other words, they impersonate an alien contact because by us imagining that it's an alien being, by default we now have to imagine a bigger picture, other dimensions, other worlds, how we might fit into those other worlds, you see? And so now we're going to cut to our next example in the alien question. And there couldn't be a more influential piece that really defines many aspects of the good alien encounter. You see, Stryber's experience is strange and neutral. In the end, you don't really know what to make of it, which is why it's kind of honest, and it was such a big hit, because it was a very confessional and honest approach. Look, I don't know if they're good or bad, if it's my mind or if it's not, you know. There's all these different things happening. So, but in the pop culture now, the good expression of this has been the idea that they're here to help us, teach us, and that these aliens, whoever they are, even if they're dwarves, they're here to stimulate us in different ways. And this example is given best here in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
All departments and operations during this phase signify by beeping twice.
If everything's ready here on the dark side of the moon, play the 5 tones.
The idea of communicating with the aliens through music. Why? Because music is a universal language. Beyond our ability to fail. In other words, everything's clear, no confusion with the musical language. And the idea is, by this encounter, we're opening our minds to different ideas, different possibilities. In all likelihood, the ship is actually from the hollow earth or something. It's not alien at all from outer space. But it's the idea that's important.
Give her 6 quavers, then pause.
She sent us 4 quavers, a group of 5 quavers, a group of 4
So,
quavers.
the idea here, and it's easy to get caught up in a reverie almost, for me. Consider a spectrum of communication beyond anything that is limited to your culture.
The only thing these phrases have in common are 5 signals.
I hope somebody's taking all this.
And, of course,
Seems they're trying to
you know, an example similar from other contexts that you're going to come up with will be crop circles. The idea that the crop circles are being perpetrated by the dwarves, whoever, at the goddess's instigation to get humans to think about a bigger picture. They also contain messages symbolically represented. The symbolism of the messages is encoded in a language which is geometrical and musical at the same time. So the idea is that the higher geometry and the music are the same thing, and that you need to perceive it as both of those simultaneously to understand what it is, you see. The geometry, the music, and the colorful rainbow spectrum approach are required to understand this, let's say, higher level that all aliens are going to exist on. In other words, by stimulating us in this way, they're teaching us some fundamentals we're going to need to know, and we're going to end this clip now. They're going to need to know need to know these fundamentals ourselves, no matter what, because they represent a level of maturity with communication. In other words, seriously consider if you're going to talk to an alien race, and you're assuming that they're coming from who knows where, you don't know. How are you going to communicate with them? You can't be saying, "Hi, welcome, come to McDonald's. Would you like Coke or Pepsi?" You're not going to be saying that. You're going to have to talk in a way that's going to come somehow to the essentials of communication and display a cultured approach. Symbolism is going to be involved, musical harmony. In other words, if I start singing to you a beautiful song, an aria from Mozart, even if you can't understand my language, the music is beyond that limitation. So we have to remember that we're going to have to communicate in that way, perhaps. But all that I'm just talking about, again, now assumes only one aspect of the alien contact scenario. And that is, I've been talking mainly about the dwarves and about their role to kind of stimulate us. In other words, the dwarves have been assigned in the last 100 years the role of impersonating alien so-called UFO encounters for the purposes of shocking us and stimulating us into considering bigger picture concerns that the goddess has in store. Now that's totally different than other genuine alien beings, such as the beings of light, okay? Or the reptilians from Draco, the so-called elder gods as well. These are the main groups to focus on, as well as, of course, the Sirius contact. So, there's the Sirius beings, there's the Orion beings of light, there is the Draco-Reptilian Elder Gods. Those are the three groups to focus on. They exist in coordination with the other group of UFO impersonators, which composes the dwarves, composes Atlanteans who have been survived and have been left over. There's a whole Atlantis-Mars connection to consider. Atlanteans on Mars, having been surviving the crash of the Atlantis civilization, they, we have to assume, again, context is the key. This is the key. I must begin beating this drum now, okay? Cosmic context is the key. In other words, in order to understand the UFO phenomenon today, you have to understand it in its proper context, and that includes, first of all, the big timetable of many different zodiac ages where the UFO or higher level or next level contacts are going to have different interactions with us based on the plot level of the space gods initially, then the world of the dwarves and the elves, mixing in with Atlantis and Lemuria, then the destruction of all that, leading up to our rebuilding and our re-emerging then with the contact, primarily with the three groups of Sirius as a primary contact, the Sirius beings who are 5-dimensional and who represent that star, the occult star in Freemasonry, in the all-seeing eye sense, okay? They are the primary advisor intelligences for Earth. In all the occult traditions, Sirius is what it's about, primarily. Now, also, there are the other two main interactors with our puppeteers who directly manipulate us. They are the beings of light and the beings of darkness. Whereas the Sirius beings are kind of 5-dimensional beyond duality and trying to help us and communicate with us honestly as equals. The beings of light and darkness puppeteer us and manipulate us. Okay? And they want to control us for one purpose or another. Now, to really get at the root of the UFO problem today, one thing you have to get beyond, of course, is the phenomenon of the government conspiracy, who's in control, etc. So, now obviously, in the human context, it's very strange. It's almost like my voice is being attacked by chaotic cosmic forces who don't want me to reveal the shocking secrets that I am destined to reveal. But I will prevail against their shameless and petty assault. Laughter is the key. By laughing, I dispel their attempt to silence me. I am powerful beyond their ability to interfere. As I was saying, government involvement is a big issue that a lot of people get caught up on endlessly, and they never get beyond it. All they ever think about in terms of the UFO is how the government is or is not covering it up, is or is not corresponding and or collaborating with aliens, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so they get caught up in a bunch of distraction about the government connection that ultimately is meaningless because, again, there's no context. Because no matter what the CIA or the secret government projects are doing, their interactions with the aliens are at the end of the game. They're latecomers. They have no real greater power or significance than anybody else in the playfield, let's say. But because we live in the world controlled by the government, supposedly, if you're afraid and if you're thinking about the Illuminati and the dark controllers of the world, then you'll see it as the ultimate thing to expose the government's control over it and their collaboration with the UFO. But ultimately, it's all a smokescreen. And the key to this is given in the Men in Black's activities. Because the Men in Black, and I have met them, and they're very strange. There are 3 different types of Men in Black. One, of course, are the typical FBI type spooks. They're very strange, though. They act very oddly. They impersonate government officials, but act oddly as if to undermine trust in the government. They're not part of the government. They're part of the Illuminati's secret Sirius affiliated team. The Men in Black work for the all-seeing eye of Sirius. They work as a, let's say, a group that monitors and interferes with the UFO perception. And their role in the 1900s, during the 20th century, was essentially to harass, stimulate, and cause controversy around UFO witnesses. Why? To stimulate interest in the UFO phenomenon and to make people question the government and to make all these questions of UFO government connections arise. As to what their purpose was, who knows? But now their purpose more is covert. In the apocalyptic age, post-2000, it's more covert, and it's about secret countdown, showdown scenarios happening off stage. And a lot of the UFO Men in Black activities that are going on right now are not happening in the public eye. Unlike the stuff that happened in the 1950s, 60s, 70s. So anyway, this interaction here in this X-Files episode is key because it shows just briefly the way the Men in Black operate and how their perspective is designed, again, almost like the dwarves, to shock people into a different view. And it's interesting.
I know how crazy all this sounds, but I don't care. What I have to say has to be said.
Why did you wait till now to tell us this information? 2 kids' lives may be affected by
This
it.
guy had a UFO encounter, of course, so the Men in Black came knocking.
It has to do with the entire planet, the universe, and who knows what all.
Why don't you tell us what happened that night?
It's all here. After seeing what I saw that night, I rushed right home and wrote it all down. 48 hours straight. I didn't want to forget a single detail. But I feel that I should warn you. I don't want to be overly dramatic here, but by looking at this, you're putting your lives in danger.
Why is that?
And the choice of actors for the Men in Black is very synchronicitous. Jesse Ventura, who played Abraxas, Guardian of the Universe, and Alex Trebek, game show host of Jeopardy. What's that imply? That the Abraxas principle is the modern myth structure, and that it's a game.
No other object has been misidentified as a flying saucer more often than the planet Venus.
Really?
The misidentification of flying saucers as Venus was a major propaganda tool put out by the U.S. government.
If 2 strangers
If
drive
you
in
saw a
the garage,
UFO,
I
they
tell
kept
them to get
saying,
down
"Oh,
off
it
the
must have been
property," but
Venus."
This time I didn't.
It was
It
Venus.
was like I was in a trance or something.
It was
What do
Venus.
these men look like?
Now, usually I'm really good with faces. But this time all I can remember is how they were dressed. They
All
were
in black?
How'd you know that?
Since the 50s, people who've had close encounters have reported subsequent visitations from these unearthly men in black.
Here's
But
the key point.
myths about men in black garments have been recorded throughout history in many different cultures. The Celtic legends are filled with trickster men in black, and how anyone who encounters them becomes enchanted.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure the modern reconstruction of ancient fairy tales
Now
lends any more credence.
let's just rewind that briefly, okay? Because it's a key element injected here at this time.
Visitations from these unearthly men in black.
Jose Chung, the novelist who's in this episode narrating this, he injects the Jacques Vallée point of view on UFOs. That what's going on there, right down to the Men in Black, is something that's been going on forever. And as I was saying, with the Men in Black, there are 3 different types. One is the typical human impersonators. Then there's the robots from the future, robotic Men in Black. But the 3rd type are dark elf type of wizards in black garments. And these are the ones from the Celtic myth, obviously, that Jose Chung mentions here. And Jacques Vallée talks about this, and even synchronistically, one of the sub-characters in this episode is named Jacques Vallée, as a message confirming all of this in a subconscious way. You just don't turn it off. It keeps going and going.
But myths about men in black garments have been recorded throughout history in many different cultures. The Celtic legends are filled with trickster men in black, and how anyone who encounters them becomes enchanted.
Unfortunately, I'm not sure the modern reconstruction of ancient fairy tales lends any more credence to Rocky's testimony.
Modern reconstruction of ancient fairy tales. Okay? So the fairy tales of old are being reconstructed in the modern world in the form of UFOs, encounters with the strange beings of light, beings serving them, dwarf beings, elf-like beings, and mysterious men in black who enchant you. All of it coming together at the right time, now in a whole new context, which obviously is just the same old cast of characters in a new costume arrangement.
Even the former leader of your United States of America, James Earl Carter Jr., thought he saw a UFO once. But it's been proven he only saw the planet Venus.
I'm a Republican.
Venus was at its peak brilliance last night. You probably thought you saw something up in the sky other than Venus. But I assure you, it was Venus.
I know.
And this is it. Again, the man in black here. And Jesse Ventura delivers it so well. Here's a witness. Let's say this is a key point, okay? Because this is how cults form. This guy who's had this UFO encounter in this episode, later on will end up going to California and forming his own UFO contact cult. Why? Here's the key. Because the Men in Black harassed him, because he had this experience where they showed up and made him feel more important, like he needed to be, really working hard to get his message out because they tried to get it stopped. Okay? And the idea then is that also, again, Ventura as the Man in Black, he's undermining the trust in the government by putting forth such a ridiculous theory. This guy just saw a UFO and another ship piloted by another creature from another dimension in his, in the middle of the street, having some kind of weird encounter with another car. Okay, so obviously something very different than, the planet Venus was at peak brilliance last night. So obviously that's a ridiculous explanation. And this you have to look into in terms of the government's approach to UFOs. So it's swamp gas. Or my new favorite, the Nazca Indians had to have hot air balloons in order to make their giant god-sized patterns in the desert. So deliberately absurd explanations put out by authority. Why? To undermine authority. Why? Because the age of the father is coming to an end, has come to its end, and with the death of the age of the father is that also the death in the faith in the experts, faith in the authorities. Why? Because in the apocalyptic age, all of history is happening at once. Why is all of history happening at once? Because we're at the conclusion of the 26,000-year loop, and this period from 2000 to 2012 is a time when, in fact, all history begins to be happening simultaneously, and all of the things happening in the 20th century are prepping us for the events occurring now. And so the aliens returning, the dwarves returning, is part of the return of history. You see, it's very complex, but if it's happening simultaneously, in other words, if all of history is actually happening at the same time in an eternal four-dimensional now, and if that really is the basic four-dimensional structure of our reality, and that is the type of reality that aliens or higher dimensional beings would interact with us on. Think of it in terms of that music analogy we just saw with Close Encounters. Why music? Because music represents a four-dimensional approach. The sound wave is the wave instead of a particle approach, you see? And think of it, the particles of our trying to rationalize and compartmentalize things versus the wave of the mathematical possibilities of the higher level contact, okay? And so all these things have to be considered in multiplicity of views. So in order to understand things four-dimensionally, multiplicity-wise, first thing that has to happen is death in the adherence to the old ways of thinking represented by confidence in the Father, confidence in the government, confidence in religion, okay? So the Men in Black, for a character like this who's going to form his own UFO cult, they are undermining all the other confidence that might hold him back from forming his cult. So the Men in Black, why? You'd think, since they're working for Sirius, that they'd be, maybe a bit sinister, but they're Men in Black. Why in black? Because they're from the shadows representing the unconscious. But here they're showing their real purpose, which is to, by shocking people and harassing them, actually stir them to become crusaders who then will substantively affect the collective consciousness. And now, getting back to the video, Ventura is about to say that, look, you think you saw, a UFO, but you can't even explain how perception is formed. And he uses a dimensional metaphor. Can't explain how the two-dimensionality of sight equals the three-dimensionality of what you think you see.
What I saw. Your scientists have yet to discover how neural networks create self-consciousness, let alone how the human brain processes two-dimensional retinal images into the three-dimensional phenomenon known as perception. Yet you somehow brazenly declare seeing is believing? Mr. Crickenson, your scientific illiteracy makes me shudder. And I wouldn't flaunt your ignorance by telling anyone that you saw anything last night other than the planet Venus. Because if you do, you're a dead man.
can't threaten me.
I just did.
Okay, so now we're just going to cut to the next encounter that the Men in Black have, this time with Fox Mulder. Okay? And you have to understand that Fox Mulder, mythologically, has almost taken on a religious significance for much of the New Age UFO culture, especially in America, because he represents the honest knight on the quest. He's part of the government, but he's actually questing to solve the government's cover-up, etc. And so his confrontation now with the Men in Black, the first thing that they say to him, that Ventura says to him, is about how the government manipulates the true seekers. So in other words, for Rocky, the guy who is going to start his own cult, the Men in Black, the message he needs to give him is, oh, you're a dead man if you say anything. But that's what he needs to hear to make him know he absolutely has to say something. With Mulder, it's different. He's on the inside. He's a true seeker. He's trying to bring down the conspiracy from within. So what the Man in Black addresses to him is instantly about how the deliberate deception of the phenomenon is manipulated by the government to undermine perception collectively and also for the individuals involved. And so you see almost like a psychological telepathy goes on, maybe, with these Men in Black sometimes. And that's my encounters with them as well, were almost like that. They could see into you with their glasses or with their penetrating eyes, their some kind of psychic ability to sense your weakness and then zero in on it. And of course there are evil Men in Black as well. I encounter them as well, working for the evil president who try to manipulate you through fear. But we're seeing here with Ventura, even though he's intimidating, he's actually part of the good Men in Black who are manipulating true seekers and different people to a better destiny, a destiny intervention. Because why do they follow you up right after a UFO encounter, let's say? Here's one thing to consider about UFO encounters, my friends. Jacques Vallée, who's the man to read, points out that UFO encounters are almost always deliberately staged. They're not random. You don't just stumble across a random UFO out gassing up in the middle of a field, okay? You don't catch a UFO alien taking a piss in the woods, and that's how you find them. They're all staged to look seemingly random, but not be random. And it's all manipulation of your consciousness. And so things that seemingly happen by chance are actually for your benefit. And so with different encounters that occur, with a Man in Black who's watching you, let's say, you have the encounter with the UFO, it shocks you, you're in a transformative state. Let's say that these UFO sightings and abductions are occurring in the 1900s, moving into the apocalyptic age, as a way of preparing the populace, shocking them, okay? And so the Men in Black represent almost like doctor's attendants who are assisting the process. And the crop circles as well represent part of this shocking of the mass consciousness. And so after you have the UFO encounter, the Men in Black then show up and tweak you and adjust you in whatever way is appropriate to your psychology. So if you're Fox Mulder, they're going to talk to you about how deception is used in the psychology. If you're me, then the Men in Black are going to talk to you about conspiracies to control the apocalypse, which is what I had in mind, you see. It's all tailored to the individual, like UFO encounters themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's very suspicious.
Where's Scully?
Oh, she went to get some ice.
Where is she?
And they have hypnotic powers, and hypnosis is the mysterious thing connected as well to the UFO abduction phenomenon. And whether or not it's all implanted through hypnosis or hypnosis actually recovers it is an open question. But the Men in Black seem to be masters of hypnosis as well. And when people encounter them, and I saw it happen myself, it's very irresistible. You feel compelled by what they can do and say, and you have to escape their psychic grip. Very intimidating. So Scully here is actually underneath the power of the Men in Black. So the theory is they would show up and hypnotize her instantly because she would never accept it, you see. So she just is hypnotized and will forget about it. Whereas Mulder can stay awake through the experience. And it's actually a message for him, you see. And UFO encounters as well. In Communion, for example, which we saw, Strieber's wife would still remain asleep in bed while the aliens show up in their bedroom and he goes off with them. But it's an idea of parallel realities that occur, you know.
Father, this gentleman has something very important to tell you.
Some alien encounters are hoaxes perpetrated by your government to manipulate the public. Some of these hoaxes are intentionally revealed to manipulate the truth seekers who become discredited if they disclose the deliberately absurd deception.
So that's the key. Any question you want to know is answered right there in what Jesse Ventura says about the functioning of the collective consciousness in terms of deception and how the government uses that to disclose certain things, let's say. Okay, this is the way it works. It's very complex and insidious. But you have a conspiracy to cover up something. Let's say a UFO encounter, or let's say something totally different. UFOs are just a cover story. Let's say it's a black project that the Air Force wants to finance without anybody knowing about it. They have a whole wing of UFO disinformation designed to disguise some of their projects. Or it's espionage. You can spy on the Soviet Union. If your craft is weird and looks like a UFO, they're not going to shoot it down necessarily, where they would shoot down one of your own crafts. So there's levels of deception to keep in mind here. But what he's talking about there is how some UFO encounters are staged, and then they're purposely revealed later on to have been hoaxes. Why? To try to get people to believe in it, think that case represents the truth, and then pull the rug out from under them, as you can see with the Roswell incident. So any question about manipulation of the public consciousness with UFOs has to be, aliens per se, has to be taken into consideration with these deception techniques that
What's going on here?
authority has to put in control because they are so threatened.
This gentleman has something very important to tell you.
Some alien encounters are hoaxes perpetrated by your government to manipulate the public. Some of these hoaxes are intentionally revealed to manipulate the truth seekers who become discredited if they disclose the deliberately absurd deception.
Well, similar things are said about the men in black, that they purposely dress and behave strangely so that if anyone tries to describe an encounter with them, they come off sounding like a lunatic.
I find absolutely no reason why anyone would think you crazy if you describe this meeting of ours.
Yes, you see.
You're feeling very sleepy.
Very relaxed.
Very relaxed.
So what you see happening there is that the level of shock and confusion that can be generated by these encounters is an evolutionary mechanism that certain authorities want to control and certain aliens who supposedly are helping us want to manipulate. So it's a very complex set of circumstances, and you have to be very careful about what you're going to believe. Because cutting now to this other clip of the X-Files, we see now the idea that they find artifacts. This is always the kind of plot level that is now popular. Artifacts that connect alien intelligences with human religion and different things in the past, ancient past. And supposedly that's the big proof that the aliens have always been here. In other words, if we can find proof of them in the Bible, we're getting some unlawful distraction of our plot here. We might have to be filming this in 2 chapters and come back tomorrow night to the chapter 2. I think that's going to have to happen here. So, what's happening? Anyway, I got totally distracted. What was I saying? About the aliens. Okay, here we go. Okay. The way that aliens, if you find evidence of an alien encounter with the Bible, with the DNA, with other seemingly irrefutable type of encounter evidences, you can tend to then think you have to believe in it. But again, you have to look at it in different ways. Look at it in different contexts, okay? If, for example, an ancient text, the Bible code is a good example of this. An ancient text tends to reveal seemingly truths about things happening now or in the future, multiple futures. How could it possibly know it? It must be prophecy. It must have the secret knowledge. Well, maybe that secret knowledge or ability exemplified there, and this explains a lot of psychics and a lot of secret things written into different mythologies. Maybe it's about somehow the individual who comes up with this prophecy or the individuals who get this information. All they're doing is breaking through the three-dimensional cloud and contacting a four-dimensional plane where, again, everything is happening at once. So it's really not that suspicious. And so alien beings, if they are interacting with us at a level where they see all of our history happening at once in the 26,000-year cycle, and then another human being contacts them or has contact with them, then it makes sense that if they're seeing a certain view of humanity, and then later on different people have contact with aliens, or even the prophet contacting some higher dimensional force that boosts him up to the same level that the aliens would be at, therefore he would see the same thing, that they would have similar prophetic and key elements in common. So here, with this X-Files, they find a UFO. It washes up on the shores of Africa. Could be a UFO from outer space. Could be an Atlantean artifact. Again, Atlantis, high technology, UFO-level technology is involved in impersonating UFOs a lot. And again, I had mentioned the Mars-Atlantis connection, and that is huge and must be gotten at with great detail and will be in subsequent moments. But now, what I'm talking about there is the connection now with a UFO found, let's say, just for example, it could happen tomorrow. It happens in this X-Files episode. A UFO or something is found. It has some irrefutable connection to the ancient past. What are the implications? How do you deal with it? Okay, let's view here just to set up the consideration. Key question.
The work here is painstaking, a slow and tedious piecing together. It appears to be a craft, its skin covered in the intricate symbols you and I both saw, but which I now understand are part of a complex communication.
Again, the musical code, some kind of crop circle
Dr.
translation.
Barnes has broken some of the symbols into letters,
Symbolic.
using an ancient Navajo alphabet.
Navajo
Now it
in
has
this
helped
case.
to uncover some of what's here. It has also made for greater confusion.
In the case of the X-Files conspiracy briefly here, the Navajo language contains the key to decoding what is actually a meta-language the aliens use. In other words, the aliens use what is kind of a meta-language, which would be equivalent also, however, to an Atlantean mother language that breaks down symbolically into all these fragments, and one fragment can become the Quran, or can become, the scientific table of elements, or it could become DNA, or it could become Judaism, or paganism. And so all these different shaman alchemy, all these different spiritual and cosmic practices, each one of them represents a piece to the puzzle. So on the UFO anyway, all the pieces are together. And so now what happens in the X-Files conspiracy is that the alien language, the meta-language, the government conspiracy, the Illuminati-type characters get a hold of it and decide to cover it up. They're going to translate it into the most obscure language that they know. Since they had used the Navajos in the Navajo code-talking phenomenon in World War II to make the unbreakable code the Japanese couldn't break, they translate all of the alien meta-language into Navajo for their secret files. And so that's why she says it's a phonetic Navajo, anyway, that seems to encode all these other sub-languages and sub-symbols from religion and science that are like pieces to the great puzzle. That, again, if the aliens are looking at all of humanity happening at once, they're going to see that great puzzle. And so if Muhammad is looking at the same Mandela, but from the ground level of being on the Mandela, of course, he's only going to see a part of it local to his consciousness and his background. Therefore, the Quran is the message that is part of that divine puzzle that speaks to his locality and his function in the planetary organism. You see?
Excellent.
Excellent indeed. Oh yeah. It's good to be the king.
On the top surface of the craft, I'm finding words describing human genetics. Efforts to read the bottom of the craft have been harder. Our workers were scared away by phenomena I admit I can't explain. A sea of blood, a swarm of insects. But what little we've found has been staggering. passages from the Christian Bible, from pagan religions, from ancient Sumeria.
So, as they're unearthing this thing, ancient Sumeria, by the way, as they're unearthing it all, apocalyptic prophecies begin to unfold around them. Nature seems to be conspiring to respond to tell them about the danger. In other words, that there's some kind of threat to the planet itself by them discovering this stuff too early, too late. So, because it's a sinister, evil aliens, of course, it's dangerous for them to discover it. So you have to, again, take their example, dump their content, and then apply it to your own structure. For me, if I were to find it, it would be actually me assembling the big puzzle myself, and the nature or goddess forces would be rejoicing in helping me march forward in my marvelous use of such powers. You see.
Science and mysticism conjoined.
Science and mysticism.
They
That's it, right there. Science and mysticism conjoined.
Science and mysticism conjoined. But more than words, they are somehow imbued with power. I've ignored warnings to quit this work, remaining committed to finding answers, afraid only that our secret here won't last, and that I might be too late.
I have something to show you. More pieces of the puzzle. Couldn't believe it. Thought I was making it up in my head. That it could not be true.
What?
What this is. What the symbols spell out is a passage from the Quran. Qiyamah, the day of final judgment. On a spacecraft? Teachings of the ancient prophet Muhammad?
I found more too. 24 panels. One for each human chromosome. A map of their makeup, maybe a map of our entire genetic makeup.
So anyway, the key there is that the aliens are perceived. Here's a trickery cautionary tale. Aliens, because they can look at a human being or look at humanity and see everything about our history in a four-dimensional way, have all of the knowledge potentially to fool us into thinking that they are the gods, that they are the ones in control, etc. So there's a messengers of deception type of warning to be kept in mind there, that you can't necessarily be sure about what's going to be going on. See, now, I feel compelled now, I think, that we're going to be stopping at this point, and we're going to continue with tomorrow with this, with part 2 of the alien considerations. Right now, I established a very good initial perspective. This whole thing has been about perspective so far. The UFO phenomenon examined in this context, implications of deception. Because for me, with my own UFO encounters, my own alien encounters, during the old cosmic, I learned the valuable lesson about deception and about the way that it's almost like when you encounter an alien being or something claiming to be alien, you're going into an initiatory experience where you're going to be encountering and coming to terms with a whole range of phenomena in a world beyond anything that you can imagine. And you have to bow down to the plot level of interaction with this being initially, because that's the way it is. It's the way it works. But beyond that, you have to be very suspicious. And once you learn how to find your feet in the cosmic world of contact with the unknown, you have to quickly keep a doubt in mind always as to who they claim to be and who they could be. And interact with them on the face level. And as the Whitley Strieber clip showed us, it doesn't matter who they are, it only matters what they're about to show you. And that's something to remember. As we pause now, stop for this part 1. And we'll continue tomorrow with specific on-the-spot analysis of Orion, Sirius, Draco aliens in full with no other considerations, right down to the mythology level, and it'll be wonderful and legendary stuff.